Hello guys, I'm here to review the first novel in Samuel Beckett's trilogy, so that's Molloy. Uh, it was first published in 1951 in French, and the English translation, which Samuel Beckett did himself, was translated in 1955. This trilogy is considered Samuel Beckett's most important work outside of his plays. Um, and I got into reading these novels mainly because when my grandpa was emptying out his house, he let me raid his bookshelves, and he was an English professor, so he had a ton of books, and these were among them. And I had already read *Waiting for Godot* at that point, Samuel Beckett's most famous play, and so I got interested in reading his novels. And I think at one point my grandpa had recommended I read some of his novels because they're kind of interesting. So, Molloy is an interesting novel. It's kind of in two parts, and I think should look at the two parts as not necessarily two separate novels, but definitely two separate units. So the first part is about Molloy, a man named Molloy, who I guess is in crutches. Oh no, he's sitting in his room alone writing what you're reading in this first part. So he's supposedly in his mother's room somewhere. And he writes a story about when he was in crutches, I guess, but also somehow was able to bike around. And it basically just follows him as he, in this story, is supposed to be looking for his mother. He's supposed to be going to visit his mother. And basically along the way to try to visit his mother, and by the way, he can't seem to even remember why he's visiting his mother. Basically along the way to that goal, he just encounters a bunch of absurd situations. Just as an example, he gets arrested for sitting on his bike lewdly, but then just gets let go. So just weird things happen to him along the way. And he can't seem to remember anything. He can't even remember the town he was from. He can't remember his mother's name. He can't seem to remember whether he has a son or not. So it's this weird narrative. It took a while to find myself in it. It's a bit hard to get into it, but it's interesting once you sort of get the feel for it. And then the second part of this novel is about Jacques Morin, who apparently works as some kind of an investigator, and for a reason we're not told, and he's not told, he's ordered to hunt down Molloy, to find him. And he doesn't know what to do with Molloy, or say to him when he finds him. He's just, for some reason, his boss wants him to find Molloy, and for some reason his boss also wants him to take his son along with him. Moran has a 13 or 14-year-old son. And they, again, kind of undergo a series of absurd situations, and basically what ends up happening to Moran is, by the end of his story, he ends up in a situation very similar to where Molloy was at the beginning of his story. So, I think these weird, absurd situations... So both of these men have their weird little goal to get to. You know, Molloy supposedly needs to find his mother. Moran supposedly needs to find his mother, or find Molloy. And I think what this is doing is it's kind of simulating, I think, real life, because both of these people have these goals in mind that they're pursuing, but they can't really ever get to them, and they don't even quite know what they're going to do when they get there. And I think that really is supposed to simulate the way that we all feel, kind of. We all kind of live in this constant state of anticipating something happening in our lives, or something happening to the world, and it never really happens. We just kind of stumble through our lives, and then we die. So that was interesting. Also, there were some connections made in the first half of the novel to the Odyssey, which is another tale kind of about wandering. Except that in the Odyssey, Odysseus had like a destination in mind, and he knew where it was, and he ends up getting there. But in this narrative, they never get there. They're not even quite sure where it is, and they're not sure what to do when they get there. So it's like it's a yeah. There aren't really any analogies to the Odyssey in this story, like there is in like James Joyce's Ulysses. But definitely, I think this is sort of a new take on that idea of wandering. And I think also like the way that they go through these situations and they experience all these things and they don't even seem to know what's going on and they don't know what they're supposed to do also kind of simulates the confusion we all feel in the world. You know, there's so much going on in the world. We know so many people, we meet so many people. We can never quite make sense of the world. Um, so essentially, this is just a big exploration of the way humans go about the world and the way we live our lives, the way we think about the world, through these two weird characters. The second narrative with Moran also, to an extent, explores his relationship to his son. He has a 13, 14-year-old son, and he's quite mean to him. Um, and I don't know what we're supposed to take away from what happens between them. I thought perhaps it was because it was to kind of show how, while we're here in the world, we often treat those we love poorly or criticize them for dumb things, and before we can really, stop and really think about how we care about them and let them know, suddenly they're gone or something. But I'm not sure if that's right. I wasn't quite sure what to make of his relationship with his son. Um, and Moran is also, his arc is interesting because he starts out, he's an investigator and he starts out with this very clear idea of what he needs to do. Well, he thinks it's clear at least of what he needs to do, where he needs to go, and he kind of systematically goes through it, and you kind of slowly see it just disintegrate as things go wrong. Um, his son kind of messes things up a little bit. His leg starts to kind of give out and he can't walk anymore. And you just kind of see him descend and descend until he kind of is left alone in the woods and basically realizes the meaninglessness of everything he's been doing. Um, so, I don't quite know if I understood this novel, but I did find it really interesting. I actually also had kind of fun reading it, which is weird for a Samuel Beckett novel. But I definitely recommend it if you're interested in kind of modernist stream of consciousness things. Samuel Beckett had a famously bleak view of life, and I think it's reflected here. He definitely thought the world was meaningless and that we're all just kind of pissing in the wind until we die, and we just kind of have to make the best of that situation. And that's an interesting worldview for me. But if you're going to read Samuel Beckett, anything by Samuel Beckett, I would highly recommend you find this. It's just a reader's guide to Samuel Beckett by Hugh Kenner. I also got this from my grandpa. I don't know where you'd find it, but maybe if you just look it up, you can find it maybe at thriftbooks.com or something. But it definitely helped me to analyze this first novel a lot. And if I read any more of Samuel Beckett's work, which I hope to, I'll definitely be looking back to it. So overall, this novel may not be everyone's cup of tea. I really did enjoy it. If you like experimental fiction, you should like it. If you like Samuel Beckett, you'll like it, of course. But if you're interested in any kind of plot or any kind of a riveting story, you're definitely not going to get that here. The focus here is on, well, the focus is kind of all over the place, just like Samuel Beckett thought life was. So if you're looking for a riveting story, you're not going to get it here. But I definitely think this story is worth reading. This novel is worth reading if you're interested. And that is all I have to say. If you want to find me elsewhere, I am at Lukash's Books on Instagram, and I'm at Reading on an Iceberg on Tumblr. And also on my Tumblr, I posted a review of Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment. I wrote a review instead of recording one. I don't know why, but I had a hard time talking about it. But I did have a lot to say, so if you're interested in that, it's on my Tumblr. So that's all for today. Thank you guys. Bye.